In this episode of Police Interviews, we tell the story of a police pursuit of two armed and dangerous criminals. And in our Street Survival for Civilians segment, we discuss road rage. Police Interviews, the podcast that examines all areas of law enforcement, including recounting officers' experiences, career advice for future officers, and Street Survival for Civilians, practical advice for staying safe in a dangerous world. So sit back, fasten your seatbelt, and get ready for this episode of Police Interviews. One of the most difficult situations for an officer to face is that of a vehicle pursuit. These are filled with danger to the officer, the people being pursued because there may be a victim in the vehicle, and most importantly, to the innocent public. In this recreation of a police pursuit, I am speaking for the officer who is still serving law enforcement today. As I'm telling you this story, think of yourself driving down the road, making all the decisions with a radio microphone in one hand and the steering wheel in the other. And oh, by the way, be considering your speed, the pursued vehicle's speed, the direction of travel, the weather conditions, the number of people in the vehicle, traffic, civilian dangers and hazards, your emotions and feelings, your physical state of being, your vehicle performance, his potential vehicle performance, and your ability to communicate all of these things to your colleagues on the police radio. And then weigh all of these versus the need to apprehend versus public safety. So get in your cruiser and let's get to work. In law enforcement, you never know when something's going to happen, whether it be good or bad. I'd been a police officer for about 5 years and felt pretty confident in my skills in the profession. I'd been a police officer before I got hired in this department. I picked up a lot during those times, and I was fortunate enough to have things happen to me such that every experience built on the next experience. I was working the 4 to 12 shift, or the afternoon shift as we called it, and at about 5:20 in the afternoon, dispatch advised the 5 cars working in the district of a wanted vehicle. Dispatch to all cars. Be on the lookout of New Hampshire registration plate 123 ABC. Wanted for firing a shotgun into a house from that car. We don't have any further information on it, and nothing comes back on the plate. The car is described as an older 4-door, dark-colored sedan with 2 people in the vehicle. 180, Roger. 180 was my call sign for the night. BOLOs, or be on the lookout, were pretty common. Lots of times another jurisdiction would let other jurisdictions in the area know of a wanted person or a wanted vehicle. And we'd all look for that vehicle more or less during the time that we were working. Sometimes we'd forget about it until we actually came upon it. At about 9 p.m., after 2 coffees, issuing 2 traffic citations, and finding a missing elderly person, I was sitting at the intersection of Hope Street and Casey Way. I was counting down the minutes to the end of the shift. I was tired. It had been sort of a long shift for whatever reason, and I was ready to go home. And then I see it, the BOLO vehicle with a New Hampshire plate. 180 to dispatch. Go ahead. I just spotted that New Hampshire car from the BOLO earlier. I'm getting out behind it now. We are traveling north on Hope Street, and I'm going to light him up here, probably at Hope and Elm. I felt my blood pressure elevate. I wasn't nervous, but hyper aware that the 2 people in the car probably were armed and had shot at somebody or at least shot into a house. So there's just inherent danger in that alone. I flicked on my flashing lights and hit the siren. 180 to dispatch. I lit them up, but they aren't stopping. I'm in pursuit. Roger, 180. Speed, direction of travel, road conditions, number of people with vehicle, reason for the pursuit. Speed 65 and a 40, northbound on Hope and Bethesda Drive. Roads are dry, 2 people in the vehicle. Just hit 70 miles an hour, continuing the pursuit. Roger, 180. You call it. All cars stay off the air. 180's in a pursuit with that BOLO vehicle. Right now, as a police officer, you have to think of everything you just told dispatch and keep them updated on that and continue to weigh the need to keep this pursuit up or to terminate it. 270 to 180. I'm coming up behind you. Roger, I'll call it out. You have a faster car than I do. Pass me and I'll get on him. S1 to all cars. Just learned that the person was injured in the shooting, and we're going to have to continue this pursuit. I asked myself, why didn't we know this earlier? Not that it changes that much, but maybe we would have been looking a little bit harder, and maybe would have been able to find this person before it was dark. 180 dispatch, 270's primary. I will call it. Just turn onto Main. We are eastbound on Main. Speed just hit 85 miles an hour. And we're following these 2 people. there aren't really any good outcomes or resolutions. And here's what could happen. They crash and they run. They crash and they fight. They stop and they run. They stop and they fight. Or they crash and they get so injured that they can't move. So nothing good is going to come out of this, because we're going to have to continue this because they were involved in a shooting. We had been pursuing this car for about 15 minutes, which is an incredibly long amount of time. This drone of the siren and all of the noise of your car and listening to the radio, you get to a point where your blood pressure will actually lower and you get calm, and you've had 14 or 15 minutes of practiced driving and getting through and negotiating different areas. So you get better at it even in that little bit of time that you're driving and pursuing this car. We had a caravan of other police cars from local agencies, so everyone pretty much with a badge and a gun in this area was chasing this guy, which is good and bad. It's nice to have a lot of your friends around. It's bad because you have too many people, and sometimes too many people can cause a problem. And then it happens. The car starts into a death wobble. It's going left, then right, and left, and right, and he's going to crash. 188 dispatch, he's losing it. He's going to crash. Everyone get ready. He veers to the left and then veers hard right, goes right into a chain link fence, and then just stops. And we were going pretty fast, but he had probably scrubbed off a lot of speed as he knew he was starting to lose control. All of us are still going fast. I'm the second car in the caravan, and as I'm slamming on my brakes, I slam into a curb, pop my tire, and it goes into my wheel well. My car is disabled, so hopefully this is the end of the pursuit for the car we're pursuing. But as I'm getting out of my car, I'm still hearing sirens coming and cars coming faster toward me. And I'm thinking, I hope these guys are slamming on their brakes too, because I'm going out into traffic here. So that was one of those moments where you just hope that everyone's paying attention. We get out of the car, we run to the car, and that was probably a mistake, but there's that adrenaline thing going on, right or wrong. We went and did it. We probably should have done a felony stop. We should have waited. We should have made a plan up, but myself and my colleague, we didn't. We grabbed them out of the car, literally by the scruff of their necks, pulled them down, handcuffed them, and it was over. 188 dispatch, 2 in custody, notifies the supervisor, I got some damage to my car and these guys are injured. Could you roll an ambulance, please? In the last segment, we heard an officer's experience in a vehicle pursuit of 2 armed felons. The shotgun used in the shooting incident was later recovered in the vehicle. The officers later learned that the shooting was in retaliation for a road rage incident. The people that shot at the house and actually injured somebody were upset because the other people had cut them off on the highway about 20 minutes prior to the incident. Our guys with the guns weren't willing to forgive and forget, and both people that were in the pursuit ended up going to jail. And that brings us to our Street Survival for Civilians segment. If you're ever in a situation where you can avoid conflict, just avoid it. Remember, in our last podcast, we talk about the concept of it's okay to walk away. In a road rage incident, it doesn't matter whether you were right or you were wrong. It doesn't matter in the end. There's nothing wrong with being mad, but don't show it. It's not worth it. Chances are you don't know this person and you'll never see them again. You're not going to lose the opportunity to go to Thanksgiving with this person or anything. It's over after it happens. Drive away. Don't get hurt. It's not worth it. Ask yourself, in 2 years, will I really care about this? The chances are you won't. And the chances are in 20 minutes, you're really not going to care about it. Just move on. And most importantly, you don't know the other person's state of mind. You don't know what they're thinking. Are they armed? Are they unstable, mentally unstable? Did they just suffer some sort of loss in their family? Did their wife break up with them or their husband break up with them? Are they just sick? Are they just having a bad day? Did they just get fired? Maybe they're just hotheads. Whatever the case may be, it's not worth it. It's worth it just to go to the other side. I remember a story that I read in a Chuck Norris book, and it was The Secret Power Within, Zen Solutions to Real Problems. And it was published in about 1997. And Chuck Norris talked about a situation where he went into it was a bar and he was going to meet some friends. And he was sitting in a seat that was normally reserved for basically the bar's bully. And Chuck was sitting in that seat. So the bully came in and said, "Hey, dude, get out of my seat." And Chuck said, "Okay." And clearly Chuck Norris, who's accomplished in the martial arts, probably could have ended that situation by keeping the seat, and that would have probably been the end of it and made short work of this person, but he didn't. He just walked away. I think that's a great lesson in life, and it's a great lesson by somebody who had the skill to say no, and I'm going to defend my seat. This is mine now. And he didn't. And as the story goes, the bully went to him and said, hey, you're Chuck Norris. You could have beat me up. And he said, why? It's a seat. And that was the end of it. I think Chuck Norris's logic in that situation can be applied to any of us, that we all can take that as good advice, or great advice, actually, to operate in our own lives if we're the victim of a road rage incident or something, to where that we might be right, or it may be something where, our pride might be hurt. But does it matter? Like Chuck Norris said, it's just a chair. It's just being cut off. You don't know the situation behind wherever that person is that did that to you. The book, The Secret Power Within, Zen Solutions to Real Problems, was published in 1996, and I'll put it in the bottom of my description on our YouTube page, which also houses our podcasts. I don't have any associate agreement with Chuck Norris or Amazon. I just think it's a good book, and I'll put that in there for you. This brings us to the end of our second podcast. Thank you for listening. We publish every Thursday on Anchor.fm, which then distributes to Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and Stitcher. If you have any questions or comments, you can contact us at policeinterviews@gmail.com. That's policeinnerviews@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for next week's episode of Police Interviews.